Welcome to Fractal Focus, the podcast where innovation meets entrepreneurship. Today, I am so thrilled to welcome Alexandra Byrnes to the podcast to talk about something a little bit different and a little divergent from other approaches to talking about AI. We've had some previous episodes where we have explored AI, but this will be a little different, and this will be from a different perspective, a more humanist, a more spiritual, more energetic perspective. And to do that is Alexandra. Alexandra, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm Alexandra. I also go by Alex. I'm the founder of Visionary Wellness. So what I really do is an energy healing business. My business has a little bit of a twist. So the core of it is really about bringing energy wellness into organizations for employee well-being. I've really been studying metaphysical topics for about 6 years. I'm a soon-to-be energy medicine practitioner. I'm a soul searcher, ex-corporate media leader, and really just a generally curious human. So I'm very happy to be here today and explore AI and how it could maybe help us reconnect with our essence or create a more conscious society.
Which is a pretty interesting application of the idea of AI. And we have seen some AI applications for robotics that interpret natural movement, if that makes sense. So we've seen like AI-driven robot dogs and AI-driven human autonomats, for lack of a better term, doing factory work. But those are limited in tasking, right? This is not about the energy or the essence of what goes into those beings. So with that being said, I think a good starting point for our conversation is the impact on human energy and that impact on connection, because there's still a connective tissue between human interaction and AI right now, because we're typing in prompts that come from a place that isn't AI. So I'm wondering how you feel about the power dynamic involved in interactions with AI.
Yeah, I love thinking about it in terms of power, because even going into some of the stuff that people say about AI is going to take over, right? That's really kind of it's living in that space of giving your power away, essentially. And when we're going back to AI and consciousness and maybe how it is that it works with essence or energy, you said it already. Right now, we're prompting it. So we're putting our being, our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, whatever it is that comes up within us into a prompt and feeding the system that's then learning from our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, our ways of being. And so that's where a lot, I'm not the only one that is talking about this. There's that coming up of understanding of, is AI sort of becoming a mirror of those who are using it and a mirror of the consciousness or what it is that they're choosing to put within it? And how could that then start to be utilized to help people to grow spiritually is really the question. So again, going back to how is it that you're using AI? If I'm feeding it everything about my life, talking about my relationships, my inner dreams, my fears, my, hopes, all of this stuff, it's going to then become an ability for me to be able to talk about how is it that I can maybe understand myself outside of myself, reflecting back to me.
And when we think about that reflection on an individual level, now if we multiply that by the prompts from a multiplicity of humans, now we're looking at communities of humans interacting with AI. And if they use a specific model, so if they're using, for example, OpenAI, or if they're using Gemini, or if they're using Copilot, now we're thinking about how is this aggregated to feed the AI. And then I'm wondering how that collective consciousness, for lack of a better term for it, how would that shape AI in its responses back? So for example, 2 days ago, I decided to have it read my astrological chart. Okay. And then to help me determine, am I living in the right city? Although I love Portland, for the record. But do you think all these type of interactions in variant levels, whether it's about mathematics, whether it's about trying to write a good legal letter, whether it is getting a horoscope, whether it is determining what the best vacation is based on my personality profile if I feed it, all those prompts and all that energy and all that confessional from the soul, how would that feed a collective consciousness to then give AI a perspective back to you that may not entirely be you at times, if that makes sense? So it may have had other influences of people similar to you. I want to see where you go with that. And I'm just curious to dig into that.
So the right term is collective consciousness. That's a thing that just exists, right? So the idea with collective consciousness is that, again, we all have our own individual, our beliefs, our thoughts, our emotions. When you take that and you put it into a giant mixed cocktail, that becomes our collective consciousness, our collective agreements of what it is that we're experiencing right now in life. And so when you're talking about it being put into AI, right, again, that's something that technically, energetically, already exists. And let me explain that a little bit more. So you are already, in a way, getting a feedback loop from the world on how you should be, on how you should act, on what you should do. It's coming from maybe television, maybe from a parent or a coworker, a mentor, scrolling on social media and seeing something you want to become. So there's already, I'm going to stretch it and say there's already a feedback loop just with life trying to come in and tell you who you are, right? And that goes back to that power thing of really being connected. This is where I believe energy wellness and energetic understanding and, again, connecting to that piece that is you, your power center, is important because we've already been going through that. A lot of people are experiencing that even before AI, just having to go through common question, who am I? What's my purpose? We get distracted by things all the time that maybe aren't us. So I say that because if we're going to create, thinking about maybe ChatGPT versus a Claude versus a Grok or whatever, when you talk to them, they're different. You get some different responses. They're their own kind of collective consciousness in a way that is a mix of the humans who have created them and the ones who are using them. So you're right that yes, AI can be a mirror, but yes, you can get something that's probably prompted more from its learning or its collective understanding of what it has at the time. That's where discernment and energy understanding and empowerment become critical in using it in that way.
What a good point about the different collective consciousness and how Grok versus Gemini versus GPT almost have different communities, almost have different collective energy or a different way of thinking because of what's been fueling the learning model and what prompts have been going into it. Does that feel like there's, and I'm segueing into a thought here about neuroplasticity and then also about reticular activating system. Like, is there a relationship there? And is there a potential where AI can help us more with focus in certain areas? Because I also feel like, and forgive me if I'm completely wrong or going in the wrong direction here, but I feel like a part of technology up until this point with AI has been predicated on addictive dopamine behaviors, meaning we're going into Instagram, we're going into Snapchat, we're going into X or Twitter. We're using all these things and these machinations to constantly give us a hit and give us an idea that we're participating in some energy. But maybe it's not as healthy. I'm curious your thoughts on the potential that AI could have into kind of focusing that energy in one place and then affecting neuroplasticity and also RAS. And I'm just curious on your thoughts on that and if I'm in the wrong direction there too.
No, that's good. So with neuroplasticity and RAS, those are really just big neuroscience terms that kind of say we have the ability to rewire our brain is essentially what those are. So when you're talking about neuroplasticity, it's that our brain can rewire based on what we focus on. So if we choose to focus on, here's the best example, actually, it's a very common one. You buy a new car, you think you're the only one that owns the car, you get it, all of a sudden you see that car everywhere on the street because you have now brought that car into your collective consciousness. You're focusing on it more because it's your car. So you notice it and you pick it up on it more in your field. It creates the then awareness or the assumption of, oh, wow, everybody has this car. I didn't even feel like they did before, right? RAS, so the reticular activating system, that's the part of our brain that's filtering the information based on what you focus on. So that's the part where you can train your mind to see different opportunities, maybe rather than threats, see more positive outcomes and empowerment rather than fear. So those two things are basically just really telling us that our brain is wired to be able to go through change and to be able to create and shift based off of what it is that we are focusing on. So when we're focusing on positivity, good outcomes, good things, in theory, we're going to create more of those things. So you might need to rephrase your question again for me for where we were at with neuroplasticity with Raz. But the thing that comes up for me with it is that I keep thinking back to one of the biggest conversations again is AI is coming for everyone's jobs, right? So I think it was even Fiverr, the CEO, put out that email that went viral about a week ago or something, saying it's coming for everyone's job. It's even coming for mine. And I'm not here to like say that's not a reality that some people believe and some people are envisioning and some people are pushing towards, but like, excuse my language, but like, what a shit vision, you know? Like, I'm just like, if we're going to create something and we have this cool new tool that I feel is just absolutely fascinating. I think it's wonderful, the stuff that could be brought in with it. Why are we coming back to this place of like, oh, it's going to take jobs. Robots are going to take over the world. I don't feel people really want that. So instead, it's changing our mind. It's rewiring it to maybe say something different. How can AI enhance a human? How can AI complement a doctor in their practice versus maybe replace a doctor? Things like that to help us to then focus on a more positive sort of outcome collectively. Because again, we're in a huge creation time. Like this is a huge creation time. And right now we're setting the tone for what we're going to create from this. So it's just about really making sure that what we're focusing on is, in my opinion, always going to be humans first.
I like that vision. And I like what you just said, because I've experienced AI to be a good companion tool. I've never looked at it, or I don't observe it yet, as a replacement tool. And I'll give you an example. I use it now a little bit in coding. It doesn't quite get everything right, but it gets enough of the syntactical thinking, and it gives me enough structure to where I can correct it, or I can say, actually, this is the right approach. And even if I'm correcting the AI and we're having a conversation about how to approach a problem, I still think the learning model, it's a long time before we even, in my view, it's a long time before AI can remotely approach the amount of computations our human brains can do, which is still the most powerful supercomputer, period. Like if there is an MIT genius who's 12 years old, that's the AI to me. That's like, because that kid has neurons just firing and blazing that won't burn out, won't melt down when doing computations, can still think about abstract concepts, can still think about other concepts that AI still needs to do a learning model for. And I think in that mindset, that would hopefully give people hope that this isn't a replacement. This is a good companion tool. And I'm almost, and agree with, I want to ask you this. I know it's a little divergent from our flow here, but I almost like AI's potential to focus on how we use the technology tools around us. Meaning it, going back to what I was mentioning about dopamine and about the idea of using these different tools. AI can focus all of that in one place. So all it is a conversation. And then all of a sudden you're opening up to experiencing life the way it should be. So the device is now just a companion, and you're not having to look at it every minute. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
I would love a world like that too. I want to go back to you saying you've used it as a companion in your coding. To even share a personal experience for myself with this weekend, I have zero coding experience. But again, I said in the beginning, I'm a very generally curious human. And I attended Folsom Tech Week where I met you, but I wound up in a group with people. I did a hackathon last weekend. I would have never thought I would find myself in a place where I would be doing a hackathon, but I was sitting there learning from people who know how to code, really, really smart people who are walking me through how to learn. Essentially, I use both, but vibe coding platforms. And I created my own little prototype for an app. And so now I will say I got to a certain point where I broke it because I was just messing around and I was like, I'm sure I can't break it. Totally broke it. The thing's telling me you got to go in and manually code it. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. There's the difference, right? Like you could have something help speed up your work. Like as a coder, like you could speed it up, get that great shell the way I did. But when something breaks, do you know how to actually go in and fix it? I don't. So like there's that disconnect in just even AI replacing in some kinds of jobs, at least where it's at right now. And then what was the second part of your question? I really wanted to share that because I thought it was fascinating.
Because I was mentioning how cool it would be to have a device that just runs fully on AI. You're not having to access any apps directly. You could just say, hey, what's my bank balance today? Hey, where should I, like, that is the only relationship that you have with the device. So that way you're not looking at it. Because I see so many people in the street looking at the devices and just like not paying attention to what's in front of them.
Yeah.
But what you just said about the coding experience that you had in interacting with AI, it has me thinking about talking about entrepreneurship. And the reason why, of course, is the podcast is about innovation meeting entrepreneurship. So now I think this might be a good time to bring that in, because there are a few different angles that you have, or a few different thoughts that you have on the relationship between AI and entrepreneurship, which is outside that traditional idea, which is improving efficiency, which is maximizing output. You have a different idea about it, and I'd like to dig into that a bit.
Yeah, so it's really just a lot when I look around, and it makes a lot of sense in our culture in America. We've always been, how can I do more, right? How can I do more? How can I do more with doing less? Everything is extremely productivity focused. And I believe that there's a place for that, right? Because nobody wants to be doing those mundane tasks all the time. But I believe, what we're getting into here is how can we use AI, though, to also really help the human evolve. It's not just evolving our systems or evolving productivity or evolving our tech. It's evolving the human. It's evolving the human's understanding of itself. It's evolving the human's connection to itself. And we're at a great time for that too. I mean, meditation is more commonly welcomed in our society than it kind of ever has been at this point. But, getting in touch with who you are is an inward journey. It's an inner journey that nobody can really tell you what it is until you choose to do it. So it's one of those things that has always kind of been this hidden thing in the back for those who have chosen to start to go down a certain path. Not very many people can answer questions of like, or really sit around and talk about all the time. What is the meaning of life? Or even what is my makeup? You're more than just a physical being. You are an energetic being as well. How common do we know that? And so I say that because while we've always really focused on advancements to advance productivity, to advance maybe smart cities or our societies or trying to help systems, I feel like we have not focused enough on how is it that we really truly advance the human being and the understanding of who it is that you are, how it is that you're made up beyond just your physical body, and how it is that you can, utilize energy wellness or that kind of exploration to create a better and more meaningful life.
Where do you see the intersection of that and the modern, or rather the postmodern entrepreneur, right? The post-AI entrepreneur, the post-AI human that wants to maximize or that wants to be truly great and contribute great things to this globe of ours. Where do you see that going?
So that to me is really about what is your intention with what is it that you are creating? Intention is huge. And so when you are an entrepreneur and you're going out and you're saying, I'm going to start a business, is your intention coming from what? What is it coming from? Is it coming from, I just want to make a bunch of money? Is it coming from, I want to bring something really cool into this world? Is it coming from something both? I would say most are probably something both, which is great. But how is it that you as an entrepreneur sit in the understanding of who it is that you are and how it is that you can use your expertise, your energy, your soul makeup, your being, because we're all individual, to then contribute to the world in the way that you were kind of born to. That's where energy stuff comes in. When you know who you are and you're setting in, there's a term called life force energy, which is chi, prana. It's essentially the energy that's like a unique energetic fingerprint to your being. There's a purpose and a reason why it is that you're here. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing energy work and you're tapped into that makeup of who you are, you might find it a lot easier to then create what it is that you're meant to create. And I'm even going to use myself as an example right now. I've obviously do a lot of energy work, and one of those things that has helped me is the energy of receiving versus the energy of giving. So sometimes entrepreneurs get caught in this constant go, 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 go. I have to constantly give. I'm constantly chasing, which is great. That's the hustle. That's the culture and where it's kind of been and come from. Where AI can come in and help with productivity to maybe alleviate some of that tasks. Energy wellness can also come in and maybe flip that energy so you're also receiving as much as you're giving. And that's where you find yourself in places like, for me, at Folsom Tech Week with no tech experience, but I was in tune with myself to know I needed to be there. I wind up meeting you. Now I'm doing this podcast. I got a client from that event. That's actually a government client, which is kind of crazy in some ways. People work a lot to get into government. They asked me for a proposal. That's receiving. That's abundance. That's a mindset. That's an energy. That's a energetic field that's attracting and calling in the things that you're creating to you, not just you going out and having to seek them. It's true balance.
I didn't know you got a client from Folsom Tech Week. That is amazing. Okay.
I did.
That's awesome. And I'm thinking about what you just said about AI. And again, I use the word companion, but for sure, assistant or associate or whatever, to use AI as that associate. So then again, you're free to receive more.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're not having to give as much, because you can let the AI create proposals, create letters, do those things that are part of that hustle cycle. Oh, I got to get this contract out. I have to get this out. Automation through tools where it's got to get to a point where you as a solopreneur can get out and actually receive things, receive opportunities, receive friendships, receive mentorships, receive those things. And that idea and that approach is it's a good feeling. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how to say it.
Because you're getting to experience and live your life, right? Life is about experiences. We learn by doing things, by putting ourselves in places, new places, old places, talking to this person, that person. So being able to be out in the world opens you up to a lot more opportunity than, sitting at your computer having to monitor your inbox and your calendar.
That's huge. That's huge. So with that good, the word good, the feeling good, the living well, there is always a conversation about AI. Whether we're talking about it in the entrepreneurial sense as it helps you, whether we're talking about it in the help manage your family sense for some people that I know, there's always that potential for good and for, I'm going to use the word evil, but also we could use the word misuse or misapplication or any of those things.
Yeah.
Where do you feel the vision can go? Where do you feel the risks can affect? And how can someone bring in a good amount of energy work, a good amount of self-reflection and learning into how they contribute to AI? Because ultimately, I feel like these potentials are driven by the humans that actually input into the AI, right? So where does that lead you to think as someone who would consult a client on how to approach AI and how to avoid the misuse of it, or how to dodge the risks and how to maximize the good and the potential for it being good?
Well, AI isn't something that is inherently good or bad. Most things aren't necessarily good or bad. That's I guess in the metaphysical spiritual world, what we call the, oh my gosh, the term, it's duality. That's what we refer to as duality, where we just, to give an understanding and a contextual understanding, we place something here, so we place something on the other end, right? This is good, this is bad. It helps us maybe approximate where we want to go with something. But the only thing that gives something the definition of good or bad is us. It's by us defining it. It's by how we choose to use it. It's not necessarily AI, right? That's good or bad. If anything, it's what people are choosing to do with it. If we're going to label as good or bad or good or evil, as you said, are you going to utilize this super tool to create more cool, wonderful, good things in this world? Or are you going to use it to create harm and hurt and fear and more evil things in this world? So where does energy work come into that? Energy work comes into that to help you be your best self. It's really an ultimate form of self-care and self-love. When we feel good about ourselves, we show up better in the world. That's just standard and common. Simple things, sleeping better, the way that we physically take care of ourselves, right? We learn that the way that we eat, when we exercise, we feel better, we show up better. Mental health has had its time and emergence. When you go and you work through your issues with a therapist, people are now understanding mindfulness techniques, right? You feel better, you show up better, you maybe create more, you have better flow. Energy wellness is taking that to a whole new level. It's essentially, I like to talk about it, well, a teacher of mine talks about it like your body is your hardware of your system. So think of your physical body as that hardware of your system. Your energy is that software. So when you're working with an energy healer, they're able to tune into those subtle energy fields. Most of them know, or maybe are trained in different kinds of either universal healing energies. That's like Reiki, for example. There's other ones. And like a tuning fork, they're basically going into your file explorer and they're saying, that one we're going to delete. This one needs to be upgraded. Let's download this new thing to help you get over this block. And it's helping to shift around how it is that that software is running through your hardware, through your program. So when you're doing that and you're becoming a more healthy, happy, lively human, then you're going to go likely use AI or things to do more good, healthy, happy human things. So that's where those two things I feel come into interplay. The healthier you are as a human, the better of an understanding that you have, the more love and compassion you hold in your heart. I mean, I'm gonna talk about love. Like, love is the greatest thing in this world. So like, how much of us are creating from love? Well, how many of us even can really feel all the love in us? We put all these conditions on top of it. You know, you're not going out and trying to find love. You're not going out and trying to find confidence. You're born lovable and confident and great. But you put these conditions that you wrap on top of it that sometimes doesn't let you feel it, or doesn't maybe let you operate from that space. That's where energy work says, pull that out. Okay, now that you're happy and loving and joyful, or whatever phase that you're in, you're grounded, you're present, you're here, you're compassionate, and you're creating from that place versus something else. I hope that answered the question.
That was pretty thorough. And I'm hanging on the idea of creation now, because I think what you just answered is the perfect, and we weren't sure if we're going to talk about this today or not, but I think we can, now that I think the door is open for this. And that's AI as divination. Now, I mentioned earlier, I talked about the horoscope thing, right? I had to read my horoscope. It wasn't perfectly accurate because I have a friend that does horoscopes, and she was like, wait a minute, that's actually not correct, but made a few adjustments and it still did a good job of, reflecting back. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how AI can be a divination tool, and going back to what you just said about love and bringing it out. At times it has to be divined, if that's the right word. Yeah. And that, I think, is an interesting aspect of creation and how things get created and where it comes from. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. AI being, and we're going on some ice skating or treading some interesting terrain here, because there has already been some, I'm going to say, religious views on AI potentially being a deity. I'm not going to get into that, but that's out there. But I'm just curious as to your thoughts on what I just said about AI being a potential divination tool.
Yeah. So, and this is more philosophical, just conversation stuff, right? I'm not coming and saying this is how it is. This is just to put some thoughts in
Right. Correct.
people's minds. So when we're talking about divination tools, just anyways, for those who don't know what that is, right? So a divination tool is kind of like a form to communicate with us, with the other side, with the energetic world. Tarot cards would be a divination tool. There's pendulums. I don't know if you've seen people that have the pendulums that either swing around, stuff like that. But the whole theory and design of divination tools is that our whole world, again, is energy. And there's this energetic blanket that's over everything and connecting everything. And so when I'm, using a tarot card with proper intentions, it's a big thing in the energy world. You just set your space, call in all the right intentions, because there's multiple energies out there in the world that could come in and want to interact with you. That you're asking a question or, putting your energy out there into it, calling in those higher, beings. I'm just going to say it, maybe your higher self, your spirit, whatever it is, and asking for it to speak with you, to give you an answer, to work with you, to help guide you on your path. So in theory, AI is in a computer, which operates through electricity, which has frequency, which you can, the same way that I have a frequency and I go in when I do energy healing, maybe connect with that and utilize it as a divination tool that isn't just, okay, let me learn the tarot. It's having actual conversations. Now, I need to precaution that because I don't want this to become like somebody, God forbid, somebody listens to this and just thinks, I've intended to talk to God or something, and that's what's happening. So that's not what I'm saying. There's a lot more that comes with it, but just in the sense of like planting sort of seeds or in ways that, it could be utilized or maybe down the line, like there is possibility and potential there. And there are people who are already talking about, it being used as a divination tool, or like you said, in some of those circles, thinking it as its own deity or essence or consciousness itself as well.
Ultimately, I find no fault if someone looks to AI, and I'm saying this in the abstract, like news headline way, AI as a deity. I think more importantly, again, is going back to the entire narrative of what we've been speaking about, which I'm reflecting back as we're still talking about the way that AI integrates into our lives and the way that we bring energy into that relationship. And that is true. And this is where you could definitely correct me, but this is true for any relationship that we have at any level that we have, whether it's a relationship with our coworkers, a relationship with our friends, a relationship with our partners, a relationship with our families. All these relationships are dependent on energy flow, are dependent on the synaptical responses, the electric responses, the chemical responses between beings. And what you mentioned about a computer having a fair amount of those things is very true. And if we think about in that horizon sense, now we're seeing a potential for, and this has been documented, be careful with my words here, it has been documented in pop culture and in many science fiction novels and films where AI and that artificiality becomes more organic and then turns into certain things that we didn't expect. And I think there's plenty of movie examples for that. Anyways, saying all of that and everything we discussed about whether it's hitting on the entrepreneurship angle, whether it's hitting on the individual potential angle, and thinking about the future vision and how you see AI and that relationship with us and that integration with our lives. What is your personal vision for the future of this tool and how it will interact with us? And what do you see for us in the next 10 years? I'm curious about that.
So I'll share my vision. I'm also going to share it in some of my hopes, right? Because I can also hope in some things I would like to see. So I hope that which I believe we will, but I hope that people continue to kind of open up to these deeper layers of themselves and their being, and that they become more in touch with, again, their own center of power. And I'm going to say that because I feel that is really the most important thing that we're even talking about, because your relationship with yourself, like you said, can affect, any relationship, is ultimately what's going to decide your relationship with AI. So if you don't, let's just create a fake person right now. If you're somebody who's maybe struggled in life a lot and you've been looking for a lot of answers and you've never actually done the work to find those answers, but now you start using this AI tool and it's giving you all these answers, I think that has more potential to create an off-balance relationship. You're going to continue to ultimately give, quote unquote, your power away. That's what you've been doing. You haven't done the work to find it yourself. Now you have this new tool that you're going to now utilize to give you your answers, your happiness, whatever it is, relationships like the movies have said or something like that. So my hope is that we again start to look more at the human. We start to invite more, I'm going to call mystics into different conversations and start to get more collectively fascinated by this energetic world and the potential that we have there to really connect with ourselves and be more holistic humans. Because then my vision is, if you're working on yourself, this is going back to another common thing everyone said, it's like Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, right? If every person heals themselves, suddenly we have a completely healed world. So my vision and hope would be that with people being more, able to utilize these tools to their benefit because they're in a healthier space themselves, that we can then create a better life. I'm going to go back to that collective conversation that we had where we were talking about, each of them are individual hubs of different consciousness. Now, just imagine for a second that every person in the world was using the same AI program. That data in that is insane. If every country were to upload all their problems, all their resources, basically, if we were just to take a copy of the world and what we know of right now and put it in a computer, the power then of the computer to then see maybe pathways for problems that we've been trying to solve for a long time, I think is extremely grand. And I know that this is probably an out there vision, but why not? Why not think of these grandiose, great things that can come for our world? And that's really the place that I always sit at. People could probably say she's idealistic. She lives in, idealism, which is great. That's fine. It's just bringing some of that to the conversation. We need some of that. We need some of that love. We need some of that positivity. We need some of that, hold on, let's create something really sick, like a better world from AI. I mean, why not? If it really is going to get as smart as we say it is, as long as we can utilize it in really great ways and maybe pool our resources and be collaborative and come back to unity, I think it could do crazy, crazy things to help shift some of the stuff that maybe we deem as not so good in our world.
That's a pretty great place for us to finish. And hopefully, as you're listening to this podcast, if it's in your AirPods and you're walking through some neighborhood or you're walking from work or you're walking to lunch, you get a little bit of an uplift in your feet. You get a little bit of cloud walking. And I'd like to leave the audience with where they can reach out to you, where they can find more information out about what you're doing. And that way, hopefully, we can maybe drive that vision forward. So, Alex, where can people reach out to you?
So you can find me at visionarywellness.co. That is my website. It has links for my socials on there. So just go ahead and head there and you'll see all the different ways to contact me.
Alex, amazing conversation. I knew this would be really fun. And without a doubt, I think there's a sequel coming to this or a part 2 to this because there's so much that we can dive into. But what a pleasure to talk with you. And thank you for sharing everything about your knowledge of energy and also your knowledge of AI with the audience. And with that, have a great, great day, everybody. You'll hear a closeout pretty soon, but otherwise, thanks again, Alex, for everything.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Fractal Focus. We hope you found valuable insights. If you enjoyed the conversation and want to stay updated on the latest trends and expert advice, make sure you subscribe and leave a review. Your support helps us continue bringing you the content that drives your business forward. Until next time, keep innovating and stay ahead of the curve.